Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been at the call center for about 6 months when it happened. The timing wasn't random. 6 months earlier, I'd come out as trans, and this job was helping me pay for school while I figured everything else out. The call center paid $15 an hour, which wasn't great, but it was enough to cover rent and tuition. Most days were boring in a good way. Answer calls, fix account issues, transfer people to the right department, go home. The routine didn't bother me. What did bother me were the customers who treated me like an idiot because I sounded like a woman. Before transitioning, I never dealt with this. But after months of voice training, my phone voice was perfectly feminine. That brought a whole new type of terrible customer. The other women at work had warned me. They said some callers refused to speak to female representatives. These customers would demand a man because they thought women couldn't handle simple requests. It happened to everyone eventually. My turn came on a Tuesday afternoon around 2:30 p.m. The call started normally. I gave my greeting and asked how I could help. The woman launched into her problem without acknowledging me. She needed something basic. Just a simple account update that would take 2 minutes. I started walking her through it, but she interrupted. She told me she didn't think I understood what she was asking for. I said I did understand and just needed to verify her account information first. She said no, she didn't think I did. She called it a technical issue and said she needed someone who knew what they were doing. I'd been doing this job for 6 months. I'd handled hundreds of these exact requests. I knew exactly what I was doing. I told her I could help and that it was straightforward. She said she wanted to speak to a man. There it was. I took a breath and gave her the standard speech. About 70% of our call center employees were women. We didn't organize phone lines by gender. If she wanted to go back into the queue, she could try for a different representative, but she'd have to wait on hold again. The average wait time was around 25 to 30 minutes during the afternoon rush. There was no guarantee she'd get a man. She told me fine, and to transfer her. So I did. I put a note in the system about her request and sent her back to the queue. I went back to taking other calls. I helped a guy reset his password. I walked an elderly woman through updating her billing address. I processed a refund for someone who'd been overcharged. Normal stuff. About 30 minutes later, another call came through. I answered with my usual greeting. The woman was already angry. She started complaining about being put on hold by the last woman who helped her. She gave me her name. I recognized it right away. Same woman. I pulled up her account and saw my note from earlier. She didn't recognize me at first. I told her that yes, I was the one who spoke to her earlier. I said I was sorry she wasn't able to connect with someone more to her liking, but I'd do my best to help. She paused. Then she let out a huge sigh. She said she didn't want my help. She wanted to speak to a man. Now, she was getting louder. I could hear the frustration building in her voice. That's when I had an idea. Being trans meant I still had my old voice. I'd spent years training my voice to sound feminine, practicing every day until it became natural. I'd worked with a voice coach for months. I'd recorded myself constantly, adjusting my pitch and resonance, but I could still drop into my old baritone whenever I wanted. I did it all the time with friends, switching mid-sentence for laughs. So I did it now. I repeated my greeting, same words, but this time in my deepest, most masculine voice. She paused. I could hear her brain trying to process what just happened. She said I was the same person. She said it like she'd uncovered a conspiracy. I confirmed that yes, but she wanted to talk to a man. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear her breathing, trying to figure out what to say. She asked what I was, some sort of tranny. She said the word like it was poison. I didn't miss a beat. I told her why, yes, and asked how she knew. I said it cheerfully like she complimented my outfit. Absolute silence. I could almost hear the gears grinding to a halt in her head. Then she exploded. She told me to F off and called me another F word. Then she hung up. The line went dead. I sat there staring at my headset. Then I started laughing. The whole thing was absurd. She'd waited 30 minutes just to get me again, and then she'd hung up without getting her problem solved. My co-worker at the next cubicle leaned over. She'd heard me laughing. She asked what happened. I told her I just dealt with one of those customers who only wants to talk to men. She rolled her eyes. She'd dealt with plenty of those herself. She asked what I did. I told her I gave the customer exactly what she asked for. She looked confused. I explained the whole thing. The voice switch, the woman's reaction, the slur, the hang-up. By the end, she was laughing too. She said that was brilliant. She wished she could do something like that when she got those calls. A few other co-workers nearby overheard and came over. I had to tell the story twice more. Everyone thought it was hilarious. One of the guys said he'd gotten that woman before too. He said she was awful to him as well, just for different reasons. She complained that he sounded too young to know anything. The rest of my shift was normal. I helped dozens of other customers, all of them reasonable. But I kept thinking about that woman, how angry she'd been, how she'd demanded a man and then lost it when I gave her what she wanted, how she'd wasted an hour of her own time just to be bigoted. Part of me felt bad for messing with her, but a bigger part felt satisfied. She'd wasted an hour of her own time being difficult. In the end, she still didn't get her problem solved. She'd have to call back, wait on hold again, and deal with whoever answered next. And there was a 70% chance it would be another woman. Maybe she'd get me a third time. I finished my calls for the day and logged out. My shift ended at 6 p.m. I was packing up when my supervisor stopped by. She said she saw a note about a customer who hung up on me and asked if everything was okay. I told her, yeah, everything was fine. Just one of those calls. She said I handled it well. She'd read my notes and called them very professional. She said the customer had actually called back again around 4:30 p.m. She'd gone one of the male representatives, and apparently she'd been just as awful to him. He'd helped her eventually, but she'd complained the entire time. My supervisor said she'd flagged the customer's account. If she called back and caused problems again, they'd refuse service. I thanked her. I didn't mention the voice switch. It was technically within policy since I'd still tried to help her, but I figured it was better to keep that detail to myself. I walked out to my car thinking about all the other calls I get like that one. There would be more. There always were. But now I knew I had options. And honestly, knowing she'd called back and still had to deal with the same process made it even better. She'd probably spend 2 hours total on the phone that day, all because she refused to let a woman help her with a 2-minute problem. I've been dealing with chronic pain for years now, and it's completely destroyed any chance I had at keeping a normal sleep schedule. Most people don't understand what it's like to lie in bed when you're not actually tired, just feeling every ache and throb in your body with nothing to distract you from it. So my body has adapted in its own way. I stay up until 4, 5, sometimes 6 in the morning, waiting until I'm exhausted enough that sleep will actually come. Then I sleep until around noon, and that's become my routine. My husband goes to bed around midnight or 1 in the morning and wakes up at 7. We've been on these different schedules for a while now, and for the most part it works fine. We still spend all day together since he's transitioning out of his job and only goes into the office once every other week for a few hours. We're talking less than 10 feet apart from each other almost every single day. The few hours in the morning when I'm still asleep are honestly the most time we spend apart. But here's the problem that's been driving me absolutely insane. Every single morning, without fail, my husband comes into the bedroom while I'm sleeping. And he doesn't just come in once. He comes in every 20 to 30 minutes. Sometimes he makes a random comment about something he saw on his phone. Sometimes he asks me a completely random question that has nothing to do with anything important. Sometimes he just walks in and stands in the doorway staring at me. The first few times it happened, I figured maybe he genuinely needed something or had forgotten I was still asleep. But it kept happening, over and over again. One morning I was finally pulled out of sleep by him coming in for the 3rd time in an hour. I asked him what he needed, my voice thick with exhaustion. He said he'd been thinking about that restaurant we went to last month and wanted to know if I remembered what I'd ordered. I stared at him through bleary eyes, trying to process why this question couldn't wait until I was actually awake. I told him we could talk about it later because I was still sleeping. He apologized and said he'd let me rest. 20 minutes later, he was back. He asked if I thought we needed more paper towels. I told him I didn't though and suggested he check himself. He explained that we had some, but he wasn't sure if I thought we needed more. I pulled the pillow over my head, hoping he'd take the hint. He left, but I was already too irritated to fall back asleep easily. By the time I managed to drift off again, he was back to tell me about something he'd read in an article. This became the pattern. Every morning, every 20 to 30 minutes. Random comments, random questions. Sometimes just standing there watching me sleep, which was honestly the creepiest part. Finally, I sat him down one afternoon when I was fully awake. I told him we needed to talk about the morning routine and explained that he kept coming into the bedroom while I was sleeping, making me miserable. He said he was just checking on me. I pointed out that he was waking me up multiple times every single morning, and it was never about anything important or time sensitive. Everything he brought up could absolutely wait until I was awake. He insisted he didn't mean to wake me up. I acknowledged that, but emphasized that he was waking me up regardless. I told him honestly that it felt like he was trying to passively, aggressively annoy me into getting up earlier. He dismissed my concerns by saying that wasn't how he meant it, so it was fine. I felt my frustration spike at that response. Just because he didn't mean it that way doesn't mean it wasn't affecting me exactly like that. But I tried to let it go, hoping that now that we'd talked about it, things would change. They didn't. The interruptions continued. I'd be yanked out of deep sleep by him asking if I thought we should get Chinese food or pizza for dinner that night. I'd wake up to find him standing in the doorway, just staring at me for no apparent reason. I'd hear him come in to comment on the weather, on something the cat did, on a meme he saw online. By the time I actually got out of bed each day, I was already irritated with him. The first interaction we had each day was me being annoyed, and I hated starting every single day that way. Then this morning happened. I was deep in sleep, finally comfortable after a rough night was a pain, when I heard a mechanical whirring sound. At first I thought I was dreaming, but then it got louder and louder. Our robot vacuum had been sent into the bedroom. The thing roared around the room, banging into furniture, beeping when it got stuck under the dresser, making an ungodly racket. I tried putting my pillow over my head. I tried turning over and facing away from it. Nothing helped. For a full hour that robot vacuum crashed around the bedroom while I lay there in complete shock. When I finally dragged myself out of bed, exhausted and in more pain than usual from the lack of proper sleep, my husband was in the kitchen making breakfast. He greeted me cheerfully and mentioned that he'd sent the vacuum in to clean the bedroom. He explained that he figured he'd get it done while I was sleeping so it wouldn't bother me later. I stood there staring at him, too tired and frustrated to even form words at first. I asked him if he really thought a loud robot vacuum wouldn't bother me while I was sleeping. He said that since I was already asleep, he didn't think it would matter. That was it. I'd had enough. I told him I was going to start locking the bedroom door after he got up. He asked what I meant and why I would do that. I explained that I needed to actually sleep without being interrupted every 20 minutes. I pointed out that there was a second bathroom he could use, the one he already preferred anyway, so he wouldn't be cut off from anything he needed. I emphasized that I needed to be able to sleep without him wandering in constantly for no reason. He said he just liked checking on me. I told him he could check on me when I was awake and repeated that I was locking the door starting tomorrow. He tried to argue that it was excessive, that I was being dramatic, that he'd try harder to leave me alone. But I was done with trying, done with asking nicely, done with having the same conversation over and over while nothing changed. The next morning, after he got up and left the bedroom, I locked the door, and for the first time in months, I slept peacefully until noon, without a single interruption. When I finally emerged from the bedroom, rested and in a decent mood for once, I found him sulking in the living room. He commented bitterly that I was really doing this. I confirmed that yes, I was really doing this. I explained that I'd actually gotten proper sleep and wasn't starting the day irritated with him. I told him this was better for both of us. He didn't like it, but he couldn't really argue with the results. I was calmer, less frustrated, actually pleasant in the mornings instead of snapping at him. Turns out having a locked door and a few hours of Uninterrupted sleep was exactly what I needed. I've been doing long-haul truck routes for about 6 years now. My current route takes me through the Midwest, stopping at various distribution centers. This day I was running behind schedule. A delayed pickup in Ohio meant I was pushing to make up time and my fuel gauge was screaming at me. I pulled into this small gas station off the highway, one of those independently owned places that still has a repair garage attached. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, except for people like me just passing through. I parked at pump 3 and started fueling up. The station was quiet, just a couple other cars and an older gentleman inside working the register. Later I'd learn he was the owner and manager, a guy in his late 50s with a military haircut that never quite goes away even decades after service. I was standing there watching the numbers tick up on the pump when I heard raised voices from inside. Through the window, I could see a woman at the counter gesturing wildly. The manager stood there with his arms crossed, shaking his head. The door burst open and this woman stormed out. She was maybe in her 30s, wearing yoga pants and a stained sweater, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was on her phone, practically screaming into it. She told whoever was on the other end that she didn't care what they thought and that she was handling it. She complained that these people just didn't understand what it was like to struggle. She hung up and walked over to pump 5, where a beat-up sedan sat waiting. The manager followed her out. He told her that he'd already explained inside that he couldn't just give her free gas. He said that wasn't how things worked. She shot back, asking if he knew what it was like to be a single mother with 3 kids at home who needed to eat. She demanded to know if he understood how hard that was and what she went through every single day. The manager said he understood times were tough, but that he couldn't operate a business by giving away product for free. He mentioned there were assistance programs he could point her toward. She scoffed at the suggestion of assistance programs and said those took weeks. She insisted her kids needed to eat today and that she needed gas today so she could get to work today. I tried to keep my head down, focusing on my own fuel pump. This wasn't my business. I've seen enough confrontations on the road to know when to stay out of things. The manager apologized but said his answer was final. He told her she'd need to leave if she couldn't pay. She reached into her purse and pulled out a lighter, one of those long ones people use for candles or grills. She said fine, if she couldn't get gas, then nobody would get gas. She started walking toward my truck. I was still actively fueling. The nozzle clicked into the handle, gas flowing into my tank. My heart started pounding. I told everyone to hold on and said we should all just calm down. She asked if I was seriously telling her to calm down. She said we men were all the same and didn't care about mothers or children. She claimed we only cared about our precious money. She was getting closer, flicking the lighter on and off. Each time that little flame appeared, my stomach dropped. The manager ordered her to put the lighter away right now. He said this wasn't a joke. She responded that she wasn't joking and was dead serious. She threatened that either he gave her free gas or she'd light the whole place up. She said we'd all go up together. The manager's entire demeanor changed. His voice dropped lower, steadier. That military training kicked in, I guess. He told everyone to step away from the pumps immediately. The few other customers who had come out to watch started backing up toward the convenience store. I reached for the nozzle to stop fueling, but she lunged forward. She told me not to dare touch that and to leave it running. She was now less than 5 feet away, holding that lighter toward my nozzle. I could see her thumb on the ignition button. The manager asked her if she needed to think about what she was doing. He reminded her that she had kids at home and asked if she really wanted them to grow up without a mother. She said they were already growing up with nothing. She claimed at least this way people would pay attention and someone would care. She moved closer and I saw the manager calculating his options. He was behind her, maybe 10 feet back. She held the lighter up, thumb pressing down. She announced it was the last chance and demanded free gas or we'd all burn. The manager moved faster than I would have thought possible for someone his age. He closed the distance in 2 strides, grabbed her wrist and twisted it away from the pump. The lighter fell to the ground. Then he swept her legs and brought her down to the concrete in one smooth motion. He kept control of her arms, pinning them behind her back. He told someone to call 911 right now. A woman ran inside to use the phone. I finally reached over and shut off my pump, hands shaking. The manager kept the woman pinned, not roughly, but securely. She was screaming about police brutality and discrimination. She yelled that he couldn't do this to her and that she had rights. She kept saying she was a mother and that he was hurting her. The manager responded that he was a combat veteran who served 2 tours overseas and that she'd just threatened to blow up a gas station full of innocent people. He told her she'd survive a few minutes on the concrete. The police showed up within 10 minutes. 2 squad cars, lights flashing. They took over from the manager, cuffing the woman and walking her to one of the vehicles. She was still yelling about her kids and how unfair everything was. One of the officers took statements from all of us. I told him exactly what happened. The manager showed him the security footage from multiple angles, open and shut case. The officer said she was going away for a while. He listed off terroristic threats, reckless endangerment, and assault. He said that was serious prison time. When they drove away with her in the back seat, I finished fueling up. The manager gave me a 50% discount and said it was the least he could do for the trouble. I tried to refuse, but he insisted. Before I left, we shook hands. He thanked me for staying calm. I thanked him for probably saving all our lives. Then I climbed back in my truck and got back on the road, grateful to be alive and nowhere near that gas station anymore. She got sentenced to 8 years. The whole single mother struggling thing was an act she used to manipulate people. Her kids were actually fine living with their father who had full custody. I started baking about some years ago when work was stressing me out, and I needed something to help me relax. Measuring ingredients and watching dough rise turned out to be surprisingly calming. Over time, I got better at it and started trying different recipes and decorating techniques. 6 months ago, I began posting pictures of what I made on social media. It was just a way to document my progress and maybe get some feedback from people who also enjoyed baking. That is when my neighbor started paying attention. She lived 2 houses down from me. We had exchanged pleasantries maybe 4 or 5 times in the 2 years I had lived in the neighborhood. She was one of those people who seemed to know everyone's business but never really engaged unless she needed something. One Saturday morning I was getting my mail when she appeared out of nowhere. She told me that she had been meaning to talk to me. I greeted her casually and asked what was going on. She said she had seen those cake photos I posted online and thought they looked amazing. I thanked her for the compliment. Then she told me her daughter was turning 8 next weekend and she was throwing a birthday party. She said she needed someone to make 30 cupcakes for it. The way she said it was not a question. It was more like she was informing me of what I would be doing. I explained to her that I only baked as a hobby and did not really take orders or anything like that. She asked me if I was doing anything that weekend anyway. I was taken aback by how she just assumed what my schedule looked like. I told her that I had plans, but even if I did not bake for events. It was just something I did for fun. Her face changed. The friendly smile vanished and was replaced with this tight expression that made it clear she was not used to hearing no. She said it was for a child's birthday party and would only take me a few hours. I said I understood, but baking 30 cupcakes was not as simple as it sounds. That was a lot of ingredients, time, and effort. I had to decline. She asked if I was really going to let a little girl down on her birthday. I told her I was not letting anyone down, I was just not available to bake for her party. She said it was unbelievable. She turned and walked away without another word. Part of me wondered if I should have just done it to keep the peace, but another part of me knew that I had every right to say no. Baking was my hobby, not my job, and I did not owe anyone free labor just because I posted pictures online. I did not think much about it after that. I figured she would find someone else or just buy cupcakes from a bakery like most people do. Then the following weekend arrived. I was out in my front yard pulling weeds when I noticed a bunch of cars parked along the street near her house. There were balloons tied to the mailbox and I could hear kids laughing in the backyard. The birthday party was in full swing. I went back to my weeding and tried not to think about it. About an hour later, my phone started buzzing. Text messages, lots of them. The first one was from a mutual acquaintance who lived in the neighborhood. They asked if I had really bailed on helping with the birthday party. Then another one came from someone I barely knew. They said they could not believe I had promised to bake cupcakes and then just did not show up. They said it was messed up. I stared at my phone. What was happening? I opened social media and saw that my neighbor had made a post in our community group. The post had a picture of store-bought cupcakes with a caption that said she had to run to the store last minute because someone promised to bake for her daughter's party and then bailed. She wrote that it was disappointing when people did not keep their word and thanked her neighbor for nothing. She did not tag me directly, but it was obvious who she was talking about. People in the comments were already piling on. One person said it was awful and asked who does that to a kid. Another person said some people have no integrity. I felt my blood pressure rising. She had completely twisted the situation to make herself look like the victim and me look like some heartless person who had let down a child. I took a screenshot of our previous conversation where I had clearly declined her request. Then I went into the community group and replied to her post. I wrote that I never agreed to bake anything. I had politely declined when asked because I only baked as a hobby and did not take orders. I said here was the conversation where I said no. I attached the screenshot. The comments started shifting almost immediately. One person asked if she had just assumed I would do it for free. Another person said you cannot demand free labor and then trash someone when they say no. Someone else called it manipulative. My neighbor deleted the post within 20 minutes, but the damage to her reputation was already done. Several people had already taken screenshots and were sharing them in private messages. 2 days later, I got a knock on my door. It was her. She looked uncomfortable. She asked if we could talk. I told her sure. She said she thought there was a misunderstanding. She explained that she just thought since I baked all the time and posted about it that I would want to help out. I told her I was clear that I did not take orders. She had decided to tell people I had agreed to something I never agreed to. She said she was just frustrated. The party was stressful and she did not know what to do. I asked her if that meant she lied about me to the entire neighborhood. She did not have an answer for that. She just stood there looking at the ground. She apologized. I told her I accepted her apology but needed her to understand that what she did was wrong. She tried to bully me into free labor, and when that did not work, she tried to ruin my reputation. She admitted she knew that and said she messed up. She left after that. We have not spoken since. A few weeks later, I saw her at the grocery store. She turned and walked down a different aisle the moment she saw me. I did not chase after her. I work as a financial consultant for a mid-sized firm downtown. The job keeps me busy most weeks, but weekends are sacred time for unwinding. My fiancé and I got engaged about 6 months ago, and since then, I have made it a point to spend more time with her parents. They are good people, down to earth and easy to talk with. Her dad has this dry sense of humor that catches you off guard, and her mom is always ready with a story from their younger days. We have fallen into this comfortable routine of meeting up every few weeks, usually at a local bar or restaurant, just to catch up and enjoy each other's company. That night, we picked a bar we had been to a handful of times before. Nothing fancy, just a solid neighborhood spot with decent beer and pub food. We grabbed a table near the middle of the room, ordered a round of drinks, and settled in. My future father-in-law ordered a burger and fries, which my future mother-in-law kept stealing from his plate. My fiancée was in a particularly good mood, laughing at something her dad said, and when she reached for her beer, she knocked it over and spilled half of it right into my lap. I jumped up cursing under my breath, but it was impossible to stay mad when everyone was laughing, including me. My fiancée grabbed a handful of napkins and tried to help, but she was laughing too hard to be much use. It was one of those nights where everything felt light and easy. We spent the next hour just talking. My future father-in-law told us about a guy at his office who somehow managed to lock himself out of his own car 3 times in 1 week. My future mother-in-law shared a story about a disastrous camping trip they took when my fiancé was a kid. My fiancé chimed in with her version, which was way more dramatic and had us all cracking up. I was halfway through my second beer when I heard raised voices coming from the bar. I thought it was just the usual bar chatter, but the tone was sharp enough to stand out. I looked over and saw a man standing at the bar, leaning over it with his wallet open in his hand. He looked to be in his early 40s with long blonde hair pulled back loosely. The bartender stood across from him, arms crossed, clearly not budging. The entitled man asked the bartender if he was serious and told him to just look at him and give him a break. The bartender said he was not going to risk his job by not following policy and told the man he could either show his identification or leave. The entitled man snapped back that he did not have to show anything and that he was old enough to be the bartender's dad and that he had a right to drink there. The bartender said that the man could drink there once he showed his identification. I shook my head and chuckled under my breath, turning back to our table. My future father-in-law raised an eyebrow at me, and I just shrugged. But then I heard someone else shout from the bar. This time, all of us turned around. A few other people at nearby tables looked over too. The shout came from another man sitting further down the bar. He was older, probably in his 60s, with a weathered face and a baseball cap on his head. He had turned toward the entitled man and the bartender, and he looked more amused than annoyed. The older man called out and said that he was old enough to be the entitled man's dad. He reached up and pulled off his cap, revealing a white comb-over. He gestured toward his own head with a grin, then pointed at the entitled man. The older man told the entitled man to quit giving the bartender a hard time and just show his identification, because it would not kill him. The entitled man stared at the older man with a look of pure disgust. His jaw tightened, and for a second I thought he might say something back, but he did not. Instead, he opened his wallet with exaggerated slowness and pulled out his identification. He held it up in front of the bartender, still scowling in the direction of the older man the entire time. The bartender leaned in, checked it, and nodded. The bartender thanked him and said that now he could serve him. The entitled man shoved his identification back into his wallet and grabbed his drink without another word. He took a long sip, still glaring at the older man, while the older man just put his cap back on and went back to his own drink like nothing had happened. A few people at the bar chuckled quietly, and I saw the bartender suppress a grin when he moved on to the next customer. I turned back to our table, shaking my head. I asked if everyone had just seen what happened. My future father-in-law said he saw it and commented that the guy was not even drunk yet and was already acting like that. My fiancé asked what his problem was and said it was just an identification. My future mother-in-law said that some people just hate being told no, even when it is policy. We all laughed about it for a minute, replaying the entitled man's ridiculous reaction and the older man's perfect timing. My future father-in-law did an impression of the entitled man's scowl that had us all cracking up again. The rest of the night went smoothly. The entitled man eventually left without causing any more trouble, and the older man stayed at the bar, quietly finishing his drink. We stayed for another hour or so, finishing our beers and enjoying the easy conversation. When we finally left, I felt grateful for nights like that. Good company, good laughs, and the occasional free entertainment from someone who could not handle being carded. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.